Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Martha Wright, and my channel is I Lit a Candle presentations for the ex-JW community. So I am talking a little bit about 1975 and a little few odds and ends like the Rose Bowl Assembly in 1964. So at that time I was about 16, but going back to my beginning in 1958, I was about 10 when I started becoming active as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I did not get baptized till I was actually in the spring of 1964. And so before the 1964 assembly at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, I was very much involved with the organization. I was also fourth generation, so I knew a certain amount of the history, and I really did believe that it was what it said it was and all that sort of thing. However, when the information about 1975 came out, I can't tell you exactly when it was, but I did, of course, sort of rejoice like everybody was. Well, we could finally see an end to this thing that we were waiting for forever. And I was a very keen student of the Bible and of the Society's literature. And so I knew the theory or the concept. I didn't really understand it as just a theory. I thought that these people who wrote the literature were very well studied and that we could trust them. And I didn't know that there were other ideas about the chronology and the dating, and that such things as the Jews had the Anno Mundi calendar and things like this. All I knew was what the Watchtower Society told you. So there I was at the assembly in the Rose Bowl in 1964, and I'd like to give you a little background here. I have always had a terrific sun sensitivity because I was left in a playpen or something out in the sun when I was an infant and all day. So I evidently was in a coma after that for 3 days. My mother told me when I was in my 30s. And that summer, the beginning of the 64 summer, I fell asleep in the sun and I woke up with a terrific sun allergy that I had not had before. So it was quite an act of faith for me to be there. And as you know, you just had to go to all the meetings. That was something that was drummed into you. And believe me, I did. I was there at every meeting, and I wasn't about to miss the assembly just because it was virtually life-threatening to me. So here I am, and the seats were non-existent except these bleacher seats. We were in the sun. There was no shade. The only umbrella in the family was hogged by my father, who was a very narcissistic and selfish person. And so I sat there and baked. The first day I fainted, and then the next day I was extremely ill and couldn't go. So the following days I went every day and sat there listening to really an echoing voice because the sound system was very bad in those old assemblies. And finally, the 8th day, Sunday, everyone was waiting with bated breath for none other than Nathan Knorr to give the closing talk at 5. Well, he ran way over, but the point is he did talk about 1975, and out of everything in that assembly, I can tell you that is all I remember. And he did say that there were those who were very dismissive of 1975, but he was sort of like confiding in us that he felt that this was going to be it. And of course, that carried a tremendous weight when he was the president of the Watchtower Society. And supposedly this faithful brother and so forth, and such a scholar and a student of the Bible. Well, there was a boy behind me about 12 years old, and Of course, this is unforgettable. He had his umbrella and had it under his arm as a machine gun, and he was going trying to blow Knorr off the platform, which is really understandable after 8 days of 9 to 9. So after that, move on another 2 years. I graduated from high school, and then I got married in 1969 in England, and then we moved to Canada. And by that time, it was getting closer and closer, of course, to the year. I did pioneer at first, and then I did put a lot of time in after that. And then the thing is, people were moving to where the need was greater. And the joke was, like certain areas was where the greed was greater, and these other people were moving to where the need was greater. So in my area, people were going to faraway, remote places, and like New Brunswick and places like that. And then we were going to have to move down to California, where I was when my ex-husband and I met. And I did stay married to him for 31 years. Let me put that in there. But anyway, of course, even before this move, and it ended up being 1974, I had a baby in 1972. And of course, I wasn't supposed to have that baby because the end was near. And you just didn't want to get in that type of situation, and, woe to the pregnant woman and so forth. And then I was nursing a baby, and I was told that I should not be nursing that baby any longer than 6 months. It was just, I felt really evil, the way some people came down on me for it, because, you really should be out in the service more. And yet I was out several times a week, but evidently that wasn't good enough for them. And then, of course, here we were doing certain things that they didn't approve of. And then we were actually going to think of moving out of the area, I guess, beyond their control or something, because they just felt you just don't do that when we're this close to 1975. So the thing is, we did end up moving down to California and the Central Coast area. And I did feel good about it because actually the area we moved into, which was above Morro Bay, was Cambria, and it was an absolutely beautiful, beautiful area. And it reminded me of England, and I was very happy to be there. But I also felt good because I thought, well, there is a need here, because there was only one brother who was very old, and he wasn't very active. And here we were breaking open this new territory. But my husband was not very keen on a lot of things with the Watchtower Society, which slowly did develop into quite something else. And so here we were. It was 1974, then we got into 1975. And I can tell you this is unforgettable because we were very, very poor, and we lived on a ranch. And the time we were getting ready to go to the assembly, my husband got very angry about something. He was often getting angry, and he threw a big pitchfork up in the air, and it actually came down and went right through his wrist, one of the really sharp prongs. And of course, I was extremely alarmed because I knew the danger of infection, how difficult a wound like that was, and I didn't know if we were going to go to the assembly. And of course, I felt, we really needed to go. And yet he decided, we would go. And it was a long ways for us, and quite an expense, because it was down in Los Angeles, I believe. And I remember getting there and seeing a brother I hadn't seen for many, many years. And he asked if I knew his wife had died, and I said yes. And they both had been special pioneers, like way back when I first started out. And so that was very memorable to me. But what really hit me about the 1975 assembly there was no joy. I'm telling you, there was an oppressive sense through the whole assembly. It was perhaps because people were asking about 1975 and they were very disappointed or something, but I'm telling you, it was palpable, literally palpable. You might as well have had a heavy fog there or something. It was a time I don't remember anything joyful at all, but I believe that was when they brought in the elder arrangement and started talking about it, because before then it's just like you had the one presiding overseer, and so that was the big deal, and it didn't really seem like anything to get excited about to me. And I'll tell you something, the fact is I always felt, well, we weren't supposed to know the day or the hour and all this sort of thing. So I felt, well, I think they really didn't have it figured out right. And I really wasn't that disappointed myself. But I think it had a big effect on my husband, and he did stop going to the meetings about 3 years after 1975. And as I understand it, there were a lot of people who did drop out then. And I always felt, and I still feel, the fact is they were always on the wrong track, because they were always making these dates. And really, what is our worship, or what is our relationship with God about? It's not about serving or being Christian something for a date. It's about, like James said, feeding or looking after orphans and widows in their tribulation and so forth. And if you see someone hungry, feed them. If you see someone naked, to clothe them. You know, that is where the heart of Christianity is. And it just always seemed very wrong to me that, in fact, I thought, no, God's not going to do that. It's a trick, you know. It's not going to come till 97, 98 or something like that. But I really did feel at the time that they had something right about the generations, because Jesus had said something about the generations. And also, I felt they were right about 1914, because my family went back that far in the organization, and I always thought it was very conclusive to my mind that World War I came at the end there in 1914, and that they had shown the watchtowers with that date in there, and this being the time of the end. And I think there was like one watchtower that had it in or something. But that is my true story. I was there about 1975. And I hope you will look in on me. I have really, really important things to say. I started out with some things that I felt were really pressing at the time, worrying about the mental state of a lot of people and that. But I do want to tell my personal story of my life, because it really has important information. And then I also want to go into some things like people I met or events, just to give you a real idea of the reality in our lives and many other things. So I thank you for your patience. I know I don't have the most polished equipment or presentation, but that was 1975, and I could probably say a lot more. I'll bring out some of the things in the future.